Hello everyone. Welcome back and thanks for joining us today. We have a brand new story to share with you, so let's get started. I never imagined a single evening could send my carefully ordered life spiraling into doubt and confusion. My name is Evelyn, though most people call me Eve. At 46, I had long accepted the gentle predictability that defined my marriage of 22 years to Tom. Our life together was quiet, filled with unspoken understandings, habitual kindnesses, and a comforting certainty that I had always found reassuring. But lately, I'd started to feel a faint yet persistent restlessness, as though some vital part of myself had quietly slipped away, unnoticed, until its absence became too profound to ignore. It was during this vulnerable moment that Tom told me his boss, James, had invited us to dinner to discuss something important, and that my presence was specifically requested. Something about the invitation felt unsettling, but out of love and loyalty to Tom, I agreed to attend, ignoring the whisper of anxiety that tickled the back of my mind. That evening, as I stood before the mirror, adjusting my simple navy dress, I felt an odd mixture of anticipation and dread twisting inside my chest. Tom arrived home just in time to change, appearing distracted and unusually quiet. His silence made the air around us feel thick and heavy with unspoken words. As we drove to the restaurant, a chic establishment bathed in soft, dim lighting with gentle jazz music playing softly in the background, the tension inside me only grew sharper. Upon entering, I immediately noticed James sitting alone at a table set only for three. My curiosity turned to unease. "Where's your wife tonight, James?" I asked as casually as possible while taking my seat. His eyes flickered briefly, a shadow passing over his otherwise confident face. "She's visiting her sister," he replied smoothly, smiling warmly, but there was an edge to his voice that made my pulse quicken. As the evening unfolded, the conversation flowed predictably: office gossip, corporate ambitions, but beneath the surface, I sensed an unspoken intention simmering in James's measured glances. He complimented me frequently, each remark edged with an intimacy that felt just a shade beyond politeness. My skin tingled uncomfortably under his steady gaze, a sensation I couldn't entirely understand or dismiss. Tom, usually protective and aware, remained oddly passive, seemingly oblivious to the tension building right before him. I began to feel acutely alone despite the crowded room, isolated by the strange dynamic forming between us. Just as dessert was served, James leaned forward slightly, his expression becoming serious, and something inside me warned that the moment I'd feared all evening had finally arrived. His voice lowered to an almost conspiratorial tone as he spoke slowly, deliberately, each word landing heavily between us. "I've been thinking, Eve, about marriage and the comforts of routine. Over time, boundaries seem fixed, unquestionable, don't they? But what if, just once, we allowed ourselves to push those boundaries, to truly feel alive again?" My heart lurched painfully, adrenaline flooding my veins. The air around us turned suffocatingly still. In that moment of stunned silence, I glanced desperately at Tom, waiting for him to respond, to reject this suggestion outright and shield us from the intrusion. Instead, his face revealed hesitation, a devastating uncertainty that shattered my sense of safety, forcing me to confront the terrifying thought that perhaps our quiet, predictable marriage was about to unravel before my very eyes. The silence stretched painfully between us, as if time itself had halted to watch my reaction. I stared at Tom, waiting for him to say something, anything, to dispel the heavy implication of James's words. But Tom remained silent, his face a mask of bewilderment and uncertainty, eyes shifting rapidly as though searching desperately for some way out. My throat tightened, anxiety clawed at my chest, making every breath difficult. Finally, I broke the oppressive quiet, my voice trembling despite my efforts to sound calm. "James, I don't understand exactly what you're suggesting." James leaned back slightly, clearly unfazed, his eyes glittering with a quiet confidence that sent chills down my spine. "Life has a habit of becoming predictable, Eve. Perhaps it's a gift, or maybe a curse. I simply wonder if, after decades of marriage, there's room to rediscover ourselves together." Tom shifted uneasily beside me, and my heart sank further. His continued silence felt like a betrayal. deeper and more painful than James's bold insinuation. Panic rose inside me, tangled with confusion. My fingers tightened around the wine glass, the cool surface grounding me slightly amidst the turmoil. I think you've misunderstood who we are, I said softly but firmly, looking directly into James's eyes. My words were a shield, weak yet necessary. James's expression softened into a knowing smile, unsettlingly gentle. Maybe, but sometimes we only understand ourselves when we're brave enough to challenge what we think we know. His gaze flicked pointedly toward Tom. Don't you agree, Tom? I turned sharply to my husband, silently pleading with him to dismiss James's words as absurd, inappropriate, to defend us. But Tom swallowed hard, clearly conflicted. His hesitation was palpable, agonizingly apparent in the lines of tension etched across his face. He glanced down at his plate, unable or unwilling to meet my eyes, and murmured softly, almost inaudibly, I don't know, James. It's not something I've ever considered. That quiet admission shattered something fundamental within me, leaving a hollow ache in its place. The intimacy and trust built over decades suddenly felt fragile, almost ephemeral. How could he even entertain such a suggestion? How had we reached a point where this conversation could happen at all? Anger surged through my veins, battling fiercely with heartbreak. I stood abruptly, the legs of my chair scraping loudly against the polished wooden floor. Drawing startled glances from nearby diners. I think this conversation has gone far enough, I said firmly, struggling to maintain composure as humiliation burned hotly in my chest. Tom, I want to go home. Tom hesitated, as if waking from a trance. Before nodding slowly, he stood, tossing his napkin onto the table, his movements mechanical, detached. James, this isn't something we're comfortable discussing. James merely raised his glass slightly in acknowledgement, a subtle smile still playing across his lips. Of course, no harm intended, just an idea, nothing more. As we hurried from the restaurant into the cool night air, silence enveloped us like an impenetrable fog. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as the enormity of what had just transpired settled over me. Tom's hesitation echoed relentlessly through my mind, refusing to be dismissed. In that moment, beneath the dim glow of streetlights, I realized our marriage had quietly shifted from a place of certainty into unfamiliar territory, one filled with unanswered questions and a chilling fear that the foundation we'd built over so many years was now perilously fragile. The drive home was agonizingly silent, filled only with the soft hum of the engine and the distant, muffled sounds of passing traffic. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing painfully as I replayed the night's unsettling conversation. I stared blankly out of the window, the familiar streets now feeling strangely alien beneath the flickering streetlights. Beside me, Tom's grip on the steering wheel tightened and loosened repeatedly, betraying his internal struggle, yet neither of us could find the words to break the oppressive silence that stretched between us like a widening chasm. When we finally reached home, I hurried inside, desperate for the safety of familiar surroundings. Yet nothing felt comforting tonight. Tom followed slowly behind, shutting the door quietly, as if even the smallest noise might fracture the fragile peace we both clung to. Standing in the dimly lit living room, I turned to face him, my voice trembling with barely restrained emotion. Tom, please, tell me you didn't actually consider what James suggested. He hesitated, avoiding my gaze as he slipped off his jacket. The pause felt endless, each second intensifying the ache in my chest. Finally, he met my eyes, his expression a mixture of guilt, confusion, and something deeper, fear. Eve, I honestly don't know what came over me. It was shocking, yes, but... His voice trailed off, heavy with uncertainty. But what, Tom? My words cracked sharply through the air, harsher than I intended, but I couldn't mask the hurt that pierced me. You hesitated. Why? He exhaled heavily, sinking onto the edge of the couch. His hands rested limply in his lap as he stared at the floor, struggling visibly to find the right words. I guess, for just a moment, it felt like James saw something I'd been ignoring. Something I was afraid to admit, that maybe our life had become too predictable. I don't want that for us. Eve. The pain in his voice was real, raw, and despite my anger, a pang of empathy rose inside me. I sat down carefully beside him, feeling the space between us like a physical void. Predictable doesn't mean unhappy, Tom, I whispered, desperation threading through my voice. We've built something beautiful together. Doesn't that matter more? He turned toward me, eyes filled with sadness, regret shadowing his features. Of course it matters. It's everything. But James's words made me realize I've become complacent. It scared me, thinking that maybe I'd taken us for granted. My throat tightened. The honesty in his confession cut deep. I reached for his hand, holding it gently, seeking reassurance in our shared touch. Then we work on us, I said softly, not by letting someone like James dictate what our marriage needs, but by remembering why we chose each other in the first place. Tom squeezed my hand tightly, desperation and love mingling in his touch. I don't want to lose you, Eve, not over something like this. You won't, I promised quietly, though doubt lingered stubbornly in the back of my mind. A dark whisper I couldn't completely silence. Yet, sitting beside him, I knew we had taken the first fragile step toward healing, acknowledging the fears we'd buried beneath routine and comfort. Later that night, lying awake beside Tom, the quiet darkness amplified every restless thought. My mind kept returning to James's unsettling confidence, the ease with which he'd tested our boundaries. Had he intentionally driven a wedge between us? Or was he simply the catalyst exposing cracks we'd long ignored? In that heavy silence, I realized our marriage stood on the precipice of profound change, one way or another. Our lives had already begun shifting, forcing us to confront truths we'd long avoided. And though I feared what came next, I also knew it was inevitable. We had arrived at a crossroads. And only honesty, vulnerability, and genuine love could guide us through the storm ahead. The days following our tense conversation passed slowly, each moment charged with an unspoken weight that hung heavily between us. Tom tried his best to act as if nothing had changed, preparing coffee each morning, kissing me briefly before leaving for work, but the careful normalcy felt forced. Fragile, like walking over thin ice we both feared might crack at any second. I found myself watching him more closely, searching his face for signs that he'd truly moved past James's unsettling proposal. Yet the shadows behind his eyes betrayed a lingering doubt that neither of us dared to acknowledge openly. Then, on a quiet Thursday evening, the fragile illusion shattered entirely. I had just settled onto the sofa, trying to lose myself in a book when Tom's phone buzzed insistently on the coffee table. He was upstairs in the shower, unaware, so without thinking, I glanced down at the screen. James's name flashed boldly in front of me, sending a jolt of dread shooting through my veins. The message preview was short but unmistakably intimate in its implications. Tom, have you thought more about our conversation? Opportunity rarely knocks twice. My pulse raced, my fingers trembling as I stared at those words. Unable to look away, a cold wave of betrayal and fear washed over me, tightening painfully in my chest. Why was James still reaching out? Had Tom been in contact with him since that night? My mind spiraled into dark, anxious possibilities. The trust I had tried so hard to maintain felt suddenly threadbare, fraying at the edges. Footsteps descending the stairs snapped me back to reality, and I quickly placed the phone down, my heart hammering uncontrollably. Tom entered the living room, towel drying his hair, smiling gently until he noticed my stricken expression. What's wrong? He asked softly, concern flickering in his eyes. I hesitated, my throat constricting around the words I knew would change everything again. James texted you, I finally whispered, my voice shaking despite my efforts to stay calm. He asked if you'd thought more about his proposal. The blood drained visibly from Tom's face, his eyes widening in shock, panic flickering briefly across his features. He took a step toward the phone but stopped, seeming to struggle internally. Eve, he began haltingly, his voice tense, desperate. I swear, I haven't spoken to him since that night. I didn't ask him to message me, I didn't even want to hear from him again. Then why didn't you tell him it was off the table immediately? My voice rose, trembling with hurt. Why is he still comfortable enough to approach you like this? Tom sank onto the chair opposite me, rubbing his temples, clearly distraught. I should have shut it down clearly. I should have been stronger. His voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry, Eve, I was scared. scared of confronting what his words made me feel. But please believe me, I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you. Looking into his eyes, I saw genuine anguish and regret. My anger softened slightly, replaced by a painful empathy that twisted in my gut. I wanted to trust him. Desperately, yet a small voice inside whispered warnings of doubt and uncertainty. What now, Tom? I asked quietly, feeling vulnerable, exposed, as though standing on the edge of something impossible to return from. Because I don't know how we move past this unless we face it together, completely. Tom leaned forward, his expression deeply earnest, pleading. We confront James. Together. We set clear boundaries, no more hesitation. No ambiguity. You're right, Eve. I need to prove that our marriage matters more than any temptation he could ever offer. His words hung heavily in the air between us, charged with promise yet overshadowed by fear of what confronting James would truly mean. Still, I knew this was our only way forward, to face this threat head-on. To reclaim the safety and trust of our marriage before it was lost forever. As we sat in silence, steeling ourselves for what came next, I wondered anxiously if our bond was strong enough to survive what lay ahead. Would confronting James truly heal our wounds, or was this simply the calm before a storm that could tear us apart forever? The following evening, Tom and I drove silently toward James's lavish home, the tension between us nearly suffocating. Streetlights blurred past us, their glow reflecting off the windshield, highlighting the turmoil etched deeply into our faces. My heart hammered in my chest, anxiety and anticipation mingling in a disorienting swirl. As we approached James's driveway, the elegant facade of his house, usually so welcoming, now appeared ominous, almost threatening under the cold glow of the porch lights. Tom reached over, gently squeezing my hand, an attempt at reassurance, though I felt the tremor in his touch. When we rang the bell, James appeared at the door wearing a calm smile, his casual demeanor completely at odds with the storm brewing inside me. He welcomed us warmly, but his gaze lingered a fraction too long on my face, making my skin crawl. I felt Tom stiffen beside me, his protective instincts flaring instantly. We settled uneasily in James's luxurious living room, the air thick with unspoken tension. James poured himself a drink, offering us the same, though we both declined. This was not a social visit. He leaned back in his chair, swirling amber liquid in his glass, his sharp eyes darting calmly between Tom and me. James, Tom began, his voice firm yet laced with suppressed anger. We're here to set things straight. Your messages, your suggestion, it stops now. James raised an eyebrow, seemingly amused rather than offended. I was under the impression that we were having a mature conversation among adults. Clearly, my intentions were misunderstood. He took a leisurely sip, his eyes resting provocatively on mine. I meant no disrespect, Eve. I bristled, anger bubbling beneath my carefully composed surface. Disrespect? My voice shook despite my effort to control it. You tried to insert yourself into our marriage, into our private lives. You suggested something you had no right to propose. James's expression darkened slightly, a flicker of annoyance passing swiftly across his composed facade. All I offered was honesty, a chance to explore possibilities beyond traditional boundaries. It's only threatening if there's truth to what I suggested. I felt Tom tense even more, his hands gripping the arms of the chair tightly, knuckles white. The truth is, Tom said, his voice low and measured, we allowed you to get too close. But let me be perfectly clear, whatever confusion or curiosity you thought you saw, it ends here. You will respect our marriage, or we'll have no choice but to cut all ties, professional or otherwise. James leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, his gaze intense and unsettling. Are you sure that's what you both want? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems you're not entirely on the same page. His eyes slid pointedly to me again, and I felt the heat of embarrassment and rage surge within me. For a moment, silence engulfed us, heavy and suffocating. My heart pounded painfully, and my breath came shallow and rapid. I knew James was manipulating us, playing on our vulnerabilities, yet his words had struck a painful nerve. Doubt crept insidiously into my mind. Were Tom and I truly unified? Could we stand strong against this threat together? Then, with a quiet determination that surprised even myself. I met James's gaze directly, my voice calm yet unwavering. "We're not interested, James. Our boundaries aren't negotiable. If you value your relationship with Tom, respect our decision and never raise this again." James's eyes narrowed slightly, recognition dawning that he had finally overstepped irreversibly. He sat back, raising his hands in reluctant surrender, his smile now thin and cold. "Very well. If that's truly how you both feel, then consider the matter closed." As we left the house, the night air hit me sharply, washing over me like a chilling wave. Relief battled with lingering unease, knowing that although we had confronted the threat directly, the scars James had left might never fully heal. Sitting quietly beside Tom on the drive home, I couldn't help but wonder if our bond was strong enough to withstand the lingering shadows James had cast, or if the wounds opened tonight would fester silently, threatening the very future we'd fought so hard to protect. In the days following our confrontation with James, an unsettling quiet settled over our home, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch into every corner of our lives. Tom and I moved around each other carefully, as if afraid that speaking openly would shatter the fragile peace we'd managed to regain. Despite our united front, I could still sense the lingering questions that hovered between us, doubts seeded by James's carefully chosen words. Every moment of silence seemed charged, each glance exchanged bearing the weight of conversations left unsaid. One evening, as I stood alone at the kitchen sink, washing dishes with methodical precision, I heard Tom's quiet footsteps approach behind me. My shoulders tensed, waiting for the words we had both been avoiding. He placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, turning me softly to face him. His eyes searched mine, raw and vulnerable, reflecting the turmoil that had taken root deep within both of us. "Eve," he began softly, hesitation trembling through his voice. "We can't keep pretending everything is fine." James stirred something up between us. "I can feel it, and I know you can too." I set the plate down carefully, fighting the lump rising painfully in my throat. "Tom, it's not that I doubt us. But," he pressed gently, a quiet sadness darkening his eyes, "but maybe I doubt myself." I admitted, my voice barely audible. James's words got under my skin. They made me wonder if I've somehow failed you, if I've allowed our marriage to become predictable or ordinary. Tom reached out, gripping both of my hands firmly, his voice filled with desperate sincerity. "Eve, you have never failed me. Never. Our marriage isn't perfect, but it's ours. It's real. It doesn't need the kind of excitement James was talking about." I nodded, tears finally breaking free, trailing softly down my cheeks. "Then why can't I shake this feeling? Tom? Why does it feel like something's missing? Like there's a distance between us we never saw until someone else pointed it out?" He pulled me close, wrapping his arms around me tightly. His warmth surrounded me, offering comfort even as it underscored the painful truths between us. "Because he planted doubt, Eve, and doubt grows quietly. But we have to choose each other, over that doubt, over fear, and over anything anyone else suggests." I pressed my face against his chest, absorbing the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, hoping its familiar cadence could drown out the echoing whispers of uncertainty. For a long moment, we stood silently, clinging desperately to each other, neither willing to let go, afraid that releasing the embrace might also release the fragile hold we had on our shared future. That night, as we lay awake side by side, staring at the ceiling shrouded in darkness, I felt a deep ache settle in my chest, a heavy acknowledgement of the challenge we now faced. Tom's breathing was slow and careful, matching mine in a silent conversation neither of us knew how to finish. The question remained suspended between us: could we truly move past this moment? Or had James inadvertently exposed cracks that were already irreparable? Eventually, Tom spoke again, his voice gentle, almost pleading in the silence. "Eve, I don't have all the answers. I only know that I love you. If something is missing, we can find it again, together. But we have to talk. To really talk. No more silence. No more pretending." His words resonated deeply within me, carrying the painful recognition of truth. Turning toward him, I reached out, intertwining my fingers with his, seeking strength in our connection. "Then let's start now," I whispered, my voice steady despite the tears welling again. Let's face whatever this is together. In the quiet aftermath of our confession, I finally felt a glimmer of hope, a fragile yet powerful possibility that perhaps our marriage could emerge stronger. Forged anew by the very doubts and vulnerabilities James had forced us to confront. Still, beneath this hope lay the uneasy realization that rebuilding trust might demand more courage than either of us had ever imagined. The days after our heartfelt conversation brought a fragile calm, but beneath that thin veil of normalcy lay an unspoken tension. Tom and I were both trying desperately to reclaim the ease we'd once shared. Though each attempt felt like stepping carefully across a frozen lake, unsure if the ice would hold. It was as though we had become hyper-aware of every word, every gesture, searching for hidden meanings and vulnerabilities. Each night, sleep eluded me as I replayed conversations in my mind, haunted by James's voice and the subtle but powerful ways he had unsettled our world. Then, one quiet Thursday evening, my phone vibrated, casting an ominous glow in the dimly lit living room. I glanced at the screen, my heart dropping painfully at the sight of James's name. Fear and curiosity surged simultaneously within me. With trembling fingers, I opened the message. Eve, I'm sorry if I overstepped before. I just want you to know that my intentions were never to hurt you, only to make you see what's possible. If you change your mind, I'm here. I believe you deserve more than routine. My breath caught in my throat, my pulse pounding loudly in my ears. His message, seemingly gentle yet deeply intrusive, brought the storm back into sharp focus. How dare he invade our peace again? Yet, even as anger and fear surged, there was something else, an unsettling curiosity about his words, about this different life he so confidently suggested. Before I could fully process my thoughts, Tom entered the room, noticing immediately my distress. Eve, what's wrong? I hesitated, torn between hiding the truth and facing it openly. But the promise we'd made, to confront these moments together, forced my hand. Wordlessly, I passed him the phone. I watched carefully as his eyes scanned the message, his expression tightening, a storm of emotions crossing his face: hurt, anger, insecurity. He's relentless, Tom murmured, voice strained as he placed the phone carefully back into my hands. What do you want to do? The question hung heavy between us, not just about responding to James, but about the future of our marriage itself. I could feel the weight of this moment, a critical juncture that would define us. My heart ached, torn between the comfort of my marriage and the unsettling pull of James's persistent suggestion that there could be more. Something deeper or more alive than what Tom and I had settled into. I want us, I whispered, the words trembling as they left my lips. But I need to know. Tom, are we really enough? Or have we become exactly what he says, predictable and safe? Tom took a deep breath, stepping closer, eyes brimming with raw honesty. Maybe we have, he admitted softly. But Eve, predictability doesn't mean emptiness. There's beauty in what we've built, in knowing someone so deeply. In sharing a life. If that's not enough, then we'll fix it. But I refuse to let someone else define our happiness. His words settled deep into my chest, resonating powerfully. Yet even as I nodded in agreement, my heart continued to wrestle with a painful, nagging uncertainty. Could we truly reclaim that spark? Or had James irreversibly shifted something within us? That night, I lay awake again, staring at the shadowed ceiling, grappling silently with my fears. Tom slept restlessly beside me, a mirror to my own turmoil. I wondered if the very act of considering James's words had already changed me. Changed us, in ways I wasn't yet ready to face. My heart felt split, one part fiercely loyal to the life Tom and I had built, the other questioning quietly if we had unknowingly settled for less than we deserved. The tension was unbearable, a storm waiting just beyond our sight, threatening to sweep away everything familiar. Yet amidst this confusion, I knew one thing clearly: this was no longer about Richard or James or anyone else. It was about Tom and me, and whether our bond, tested by doubt and temptation, was strong enough to withstand the quiet, insidious whispers that now echoed through the very foundation of our lives. The weekend arrived quietly, but the tension lingering in our home made every moment heavy, like waiting beneath storm clouds that refused to break. Tom moved through the house with careful silence, offering gentle gestures, a touch on my shoulder, a soft kiss on my forehead, each one a quiet plea for reassurance that we would survive this turmoil. I returned each gesture with equal gentleness, though beneath my composure, questions gnawed at my heart. Had we truly become a shadow of ourselves, settling into comfortable routines without ever questioning if we wanted more? Could James, despite his intrusive approach, have been right about our marriage? Late Sunday afternoon, as golden sunlight filtered through the curtains, Tom suggested we go for a walk to clear our minds. We walked slowly through the familiar streets of our neighborhood, hands loosely entwined, the silence between us filled with unspoken fears and hesitant hopes. At last, we found ourselves sitting on our favorite bench overlooking a quiet lake, the water reflecting the late afternoon sky in gentle ripples. Tom squeezed my hand, his eyes filled with vulnerability. "Eve," he began softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to know, do you regret us? Have I not been enough?" My heart clenched painfully at his words, the sincerity and hurt clear in his voice. "No, Tom, it's not that," I said urgently, turning to face him fully. "You've always been more than enough. It's just that, somewhere along the way, we've stopped noticing each other. Maybe we've taken for granted that love is enough without realizing how easy it is to lose ourselves in comfort." Tom looked away, staring across the shimmering lake, his jaw tightening with quiet frustration. "But how do we fix that, Eve? How do we make sure we're still growing together, not just coexisting?" I took a deep breath, my heart pounding, knowing the next words were both necessary and painful. "We have to be honest, brutally honest. And maybe, in a strange way, James has done us a favor by forcing us to confront this. We need to choose each other every day, consciously, intentionally. If we stop making that choice, we risk losing everything." Tom turned back to me, eyes shining with unshed tears, raw emotion evident in his gaze. "Then I choose you, Eve," he said, his voice fierce with determination. "No matter how predictable or routine life gets, I will always choose you. But can you say the same?" I reached out, cupping his face gently, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath my fingers, my own eyes filling with tears. "Yes," I whispered, the word filled with all the conviction I could muster. "I choose you, Tom, today and every day after." He leaned forward, pressing his forehead against mine, breathing slowly, as if drawing strength from our closeness. We stayed like that for a long moment, hearts beating in quiet sync, the world around us fading away. Yet even as we sat there, holding tightly to each other, I couldn't fully shake the lingering anxiety, the small, persistent voice deep within my heart questioning whether the mere act of doubting had already caused irreversible damage. As we walked back home, the sky slowly darkened around us, a gentle twilight blanketing the world in soft blues and grays. Our steps were slow, measured, heavy with both hope and caution. We had survived this storm together, choosing each other once more. Yet neither of us could deny the subtle shift that had occurred, something fragile had broken. And although we were determined to rebuild, the scars would remain. Standing in front of our home, I hesitated for just a moment, glancing upward toward the dimming sky. Tom followed my gaze silently. It felt symbolic, somehow, this darkness approaching, urging us inside, back into the comfort of familiarity. But could we truly reclaim that comfort? Could we rebuild our trust, knowing that it had once faltered? With Tom's hand firmly in mine, I took a deep breath and stepped forward, into our home, into whatever uncertain future awaited. We had chosen each other, but the true test would be in how we continued to choose each other. Every single day, the uncertainty was frightening, but deep down, I knew one thing clearly: love, real love, required courage. And tonight, that courage would begin again. Life has an unpredictable way of reminding us what's truly important. Eve and Tom's journey illustrates how easily routine can mask deeper feelings, leaving us unaware of the subtle distance growing between even the closest partners. Their story teaches us the invaluable lesson that relationships must be nurtured intentionally every day, through honest communication and vulnerability. Have you ever felt like Eve and Tom, questioning the strength of your own relationship when faced with unexpected challenges? Share your experiences and insights in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If this story touched your heart or made you reflect on your own life, please don't forget to like the video. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Reddit for more powerful stories exploring the beautiful complexity of love, trust, and personal growth. Hit the notification bell to stay updated, because Eve and Tom's story isn't over yet, and you won't want to miss what comes next.